This is the new GH6. The one cam to do it all. The one cam to rule them all. At least in its class. And as it was to be expected, the GH6 continues the legacy of being an all-in-one powerhouse with filmmakers in focus. The killer features for filmmakers are a brand new 25 megapixel sensor allowing to record close to 6K in camera, an extended dynamic range using a method quite similar to the one that gives the Arri Alexa its film-like look, internal ProRes HQ in 5.7K, much improved low-light capabilities, and improved dual IS, a ton of anamorphic modes, internal LUTs, and we're talking cube here, full V-Log like they used in the VariCam, slow motion galore, that means up to 120 frames per second in 4K and up to 300 frames per second in Full HD. All that is possible due to a new Venus engine, which also requires a fan. We'll give you a tour around the camera, the features and what that means. Test the image quality with our short film Hypnagogia. And of course we're going to compare the GH6 to the GH5. Let's dive right in. Don't you love the smell of a new cam in the morning? The GH6 has very impressive features, and by the looks of it, you could almost leave your external recorder at home, and maybe even your gimbal or your slider. Let's find out what the GH6 can do for you. Like it is for so many of today's filmmakers, my personal journey didn't start in the broadcast or film industry, but really started with the revolution of DSLR and mirrorless cameras. It's not that we didn't have cameras before, like we had the Panasonic DVX100 camcorder, but it left really a lot to desire and it didn't give you the cineastic experience that we were all striving for. Now, the GH lineup that really changed things, and it really helped me and my team to evolve into the filmmakers we are today. So you could say that the GH lineup made us the filmmakers that we are. The GH1 was an entry drug that started to give you the look that you were always after and that camcorders just wouldn't deliver. Suddenly, you were limited by your creativity more than by technology. The GH4 was a true game changer that started the 4K revolution in the segment. Unlike other manufacturers, Panasonic gave filmmakers the same relevance as it gave photographers. The GH5 was and is a masterpiece, and while our A-cam is usually a cinecam these days, we still use it in our productions, especially on gimbals, or in time-lapse, or in difficult situations. Our GH4 and GH5 have seen things that only few cameras endured, and lived to tell the story. Sometimes you don't want to pack a bag with a ton of batteries, external monitors, recorders, lenses. You just want one camera that is so versatile that it can do it all. Or at least, all the rest of it. Full disclosure, Panasonic gave us this GH6 free of charge and pre-release. That means some things might not be finalized. Because of my personal history, I'm a little bit excited, but I will still give you my honest opinion. And Panasonic has no say in that. Nor do they want to have. They're actually interested in our opinion. Let's start with a quick tour around the camera. The GH6 sports a new 5.8K or 25 megapixel sensor that has dual ISO circuits. Strangely, you cannot choose the native ISO manually. The camera will handle that for you, especially with the killer feature Dynamic Range Boost. More about that in a second. The sensor features a new IBIS that promises 7.5 stops of stabilization power. Our tests will show what this means for stabilization in filmmakers' terms. The stabilizer also allows to create photos with a whopping 100 megapixel by shifting the sensor during multiple exposures. The GH6 is a real format and codec wizard with support of H.264, H.265 and ProRes in different resolution, bit rates, color sampling flavors and all of those internal. ProRes RAW will be available over HDMI after a firmware upgrade. Among these codecs, the GH6 features anamorphic aspect ratios with internal desqueeze of all common squeeze factors. The GH6 has dual card slots. It writes high bitrate footage to CF Express cards, but it also has a secondary bay for cheaper SD cards that can handle the rest more economically. The GH6 will be capable to record to an external SSD after a later firmware update. Connectivity is updated with USB 3.2 Type-C that lets you tether, power and charge the camera, as well as HDMI 2.1 that allows for high frame rate 4K. Of course you have microphone and headphone jacks. XLRs are available with the same extra module that the GH5 uses. For audio wranglers, the GH6 can record 4 audio channels at the same time when the XLR module is installed. The camera also features a dedicated audio button that gives you a one-touch shortcut to audio features. The GH6 takes a lot of the S-lineup design traits, but if you are a GH user, the button layout makes you feel at home right away. The bulk in comparison to the GH5 is mainly caused by a cooling system that has vents on the side and a fan inside. The fan is almost never audible unless you put your ear to the vent. The GH6 now supports the full V-Log gamut and not the V-Log L used in older GH cameras. This makes it even easier to use the GH6 together with the VariCam, EVA 1, Lumix S and ACES. LUTs are now completely interchangeable. The GH6 is definitely a cam that is designed to be in the wild, on the road, undercover. Not that you can't use her in a studio or on the set. It is just that you can go and shine where other cameras are more problematic. Specs are only skin deep. In the end, nobody cares what camera you used, especially a couple of years down the road. So we set out with a goal to shoot something that is also a bit entertaining. Do you know these moments where you can't really tell whether you're awake or asleep and the real world kind of melts into a lucid dream? Psychology has a name for the state and it's called hypnagogia.
Are you asleep?
Are you awake? I hope we were able to show you that the GH6 can create stunning images. We only used available light and it was just Christopher and me. Christopher became kind of an insignia to this channel. Thanks, buddy. And I have to say, it already looks very good to me. And we only had this camera for a very brief time. That means I'm very positive that with a little bit of experience with this specific cameras, our results will get even better. Also, Panasonic has a very good track record of improving a product during its life cycle. Maybe you want to play around with the native log footage and the LUTs we created for the test. Or create your very own grade. You can. With our action packs. We have 3 membership tiers that you can choose to support our work and to get access to awesome perks. With the Scott membership, you can support us with 99 cents per month. That will help us to make better and more complex episodes in shorter time. It's up to you. Also, you have access to member-only content like the film emulation deep dive. Our Lynch and Kubrick members have access to our GH6 action pack with gigabytes of GH6 footage shot for our test. Vlog right from the card, so you can evaluate the quality of the images without YouTube compression. We also included the fitting grades in form of LUTs, so you can have exactly the same images as we do. As the GH6 supports Cube LUTs, you can also use those LUTs to shoot with our looks on your live image. See these LUTs as a basis for your grade. They're like a bouillon cube for your very special soup. Just add a third node and regrade whatever fits your specific footage. If you have any questions, you can meet us in our closed Facebook group. I'll put a link in the description. Lynch and Kubrick members will not only have access to the action packs of this episode, but also to all the action packs that came with past episodes. If you're not a member of the Media Division, please consider becoming one. Content like this is only possible with the help and support of fellow filmmakers like you. Thank you for supporting our mission. The Division salutes you. Now, let's use this test footage to explain some of the features and discuss their value for filmmakers. One mode that really sticks out for me is a feature called Dynamic Range Boost. A key ingredient in the film look is the high dynamic range of analog film. The breakthrough of digital cine cameras came with the Arri Alexa, as it was the first camera on the market that was able to match this high dynamic range of about 14 stops. The technical principle behind the dynamic range was and is that the Alexa's RLEF sensor has 2 different circuits per pixel, reading a high gain and a low gain at the same time. Both images are then combined. The Alexa image is a merged dual native ISO image. The GH6 uses the same principle when the dynamic range boost mode is active. It is reading all pixels with 800 and 2000 ISO circuits simultaneously and combines the images, writing one video file with an extended dynamic range. The GH6 has way smaller sensor pixels with less light driving them compared to the Alexa, meaning more potential noise and therefore less dynamic range. Still, the GH6 manages to deliver 13 stops of dynamic range, and it does that with 3 times the resolution of an Alexa, using a small body that doesn't get hot and using a tiny battery. How does dynamic range boost work? Well, you just go into the movie menu and you activate the feature. It is available on most codecs up to 60 frames per second. It's that simple. It's always nice to have really good slow motion in your pocket. And the GH5 was already good, and in its time it was a benchmark camera. It delivered internally 60 frames per second, but only in 4:20 for upsampling and with 8-bit. To get a decent 4K slow motion out of the GH5, it needed an external recorder like an Atomos. Full HD, you could get 180 frames per second. Now, the new GH6 is a complete different ballpark. You get 120 frames per second in 4K and up to 300 frames per second in full HD. And all that with a high bandwidth and with a high bit depth. No external recorder needed. It records 5.7K 10-bit H.265 with up to 60 frames per second at 300 megabits per second. It records Cinema 4K 10-bit H.265 with up to 120 frames per second at 300 megabits per second. up to 240 frames per second in Full HD at 800 megabits per second, and even 300 frames per second with a reduced bandwidth. Especially with slow motion, specs mean little. Pixel binning, line skipping and low bandwidth can turn your image to mush. And I have to say, especially the 120 frames per second in Cine 4K is just stellar. Details are perfect. In fact, it's so good that you will have to force yourself to shoot lower frame rates. H.265 with 4:0 color sampling shows no meaningful compression artifacts. It still grades well thanks to V-Log and 10-bit color depth. We really took the GH6 to town, shooting slow motion with only available light. We kind of shot day for night for the higher frame rates, as the exposure time gets really short. This is a clip that is not graded to look darker. 240 frames per second is the highest frame rate I would recommend with the GH6, as higher frame rates cuts the bandwidth to a third. Too little for good images. 240 frames per second uses some form of pixel binning or line skipping. This reduces the perceived quality and moire can pop up. Something that really depends on your subject matter. If you have very fine detail, like here in the feathers of the penguin, it can create ugly moire effects. Keep in mind that you get just the same with an EVA 1, even when you're using an external recorder and ProRes RAW. From that perspective, it is quite awesome to have this quality in a compact body. By the way, this is shot on a Canon FD 55mm f1.2 aspherical using a 0.7 speed booster. This will turn the f1.2 into impressive f0.85 for an extra dreamy look of missed focus. We also used the spherical and booster for the firework shots, but stopped to f2, making it a more humane f1.4. We have an epic episode about the K35 lookalike Canon FD that were used on films like Aliens. And we have an epic episode about the magic of ultra-fast glass, like the mysterious Zeiss Planner f0.7 that was used to capture the dark side of the moon and Barry Lyndon's Scandalline scenes. Check it out. The GH6 doesn't crop into the sensor to achieve the higher frame rates. And that has the massive advantage that you don't change the framing. To get the exact same thing in a higher frame rate, all you need to do is to turn the wheel and switch to another preset. It is that simple. And that makes it so usable because you just stop missing that one moment. The beauty of nature. A brand new IBIS was improved to deliver 7.5 stops of stabilization over 5 stops from the GH5. That is with wide-angle lenses. If you use a lens with supported OIS, the GH6 should be able to reach the same value with telelenses. The IBIS is also utilized to shoot 100 megapixel photos, shifting the 25 megapixel sensor handheld to a certain extent. Now, that means little within the field of videography, and of course a gimbal and a slider or a crane will allow you to stabilize and control motion that will never be possible with any kind of in-body stabilization. Shooting with a gimbal and a wide lens is really not a challenge, which is why everybody's doing it and it's kind of boring. This is why we chose to go a bit longer for a more intimate and cinematic look. And stabilization gets much harder immediately. This is where IBIS can help a gimbal to get quite complex movements with more or less acceptable results. What can we do without a gimbal and just using IBIS in a 24mm? Well, don't try a long and complex shot, but slides are quite doable as long as the takes don't get too long. A bit of post-stabilization helps the already good stabilization. And overcranking shows a smooth shot. Absolutely usable using just the camera itself. Nice. A longer lens like 42.5 makes it even harder, but the Leica Nocticron has OIS and a gimbal together with Dual S allows for smooth shots even at this length. Dual IS or not, walking with this setup remains largely unusable. Unless you add a little slow motion and embrace the movement. Even a wide lens will require godlike techniques that I don't possess. The IBIS helps to smooth out the shots during slow motion shots. And the Penguin shows that at 120 frames per second you can get very nice movements even with a 42.5 using only Dual S and a steady hand. This is shot handheld using a telezoom at about 300mm, and as the lens stabilizer is not supported, this is only the IBIS at work. Without stabilization you could just forget about it. With IBIS it's still shaky, but good enough to stabilize in post, to something really usable. The IBIS and Dual S of the GH6 is not magic, but it's surely a nice feature and a meaningful improvement over the GH5. Definitely something you want in a compact all-rounder cam. The GH6 offers ProRes recording internally. That means ProRes HQ in 5.7K. It doesn't do that in open gate mode, but in a 16:9 crop, so you can't utilize it for anamorphic. But still, it records this massive data requirement to a internal CF Express card. And that is very unique because not even the S lineup or the professional cameras like the EVA 1 offer internal ProRes. All of them need external recorders for that. Just to get that straight, ProRes doesn't deliver better image quality compared to H.264 10-bit 422. It's about as good, but not as efficient, especially compared to the long GOP H.264 option of the GH6. ProRes HQ is a 10-bit all-intra codec that is very performance-friendly for editing and therefore ideal for fast turnaround. ProRes can only be written to the CF Express card due to the high bitrate. A 125GB card will hold about 11 minutes of footage, so if you plan to shoot ProRes HQ, you better factor in the cost for large CF Express cards. There are 4TB versions coming to the market that would give you around 6 hours of recording time. For everything else, 125GB is quite a bit. It will fit an hour of Cinema 4K at 120 frames per second using H.265. We managed to shoot a whole test just using one card. External monitor recorders are usually very handy to preview the look of the final result using LUTs. The GH6 now supports LUTs internally, and we are not talking about the Panasonic legacy formats, but standard Cube LUTs. For example, you can simply use the LUTs we created for this episode and upload them to your GH6. Enter the V-Log View Assist and choose the LUT. In combination with a full V-Log gamut utilized by the 13 plus stops of dynamic range, the LUTs give you the ability to preview our or your look right in camera during shooting, helping you to judge exposure in the right context or to simply get in the right mood. On top of that, the GH6 can display a waveform, helping to choose the right exposure. Now, shooting with resolutions beyond 4K means that you really have to control focus, and focus assists are just so good on the small cams and monitors. So we definitely recommend to take a monitor with you to do just that. It is just great to know that you don't have to go without ProRes if you leave your monitor at home. And if you buy or use an on-camera monitor with a GH6, it's good to know that you can use one of the cheaper models because the LUT and the waveform, all that is already covered by the camera itself. It also means that you can just plug the camera in a TV and get a grade on the display right away without going through post or a recorder. That should help you to give you or the client more confidence in that what you're shooting meets their expectations. You will find that I don't put too much emphasis on autofocus. That's simply because I don't use it a lot. Generally, I'm an advocate for manual focusing because it's the only way to set focus in a story-driven and impactful way. Also, the lenses I like to use are usually manual lenses like this Canon FD spherical. But of course, there are moments where a good autofocus can be an absolute lifesaver, like on gimbals or in wildlife, vlogging, sports, everywhere there's a lot of fast movement and little access to a good focus puller. Admittedly, Panasonic cameras are not most famous for great autofocus, and the GH6 has no face detection autofocus, but it was ensured that there were improvements to be hailed. So we used native supported servo lenses on our gimbal shot, and we made a lot of the typical long smooth moves, approaching and pulling out of the talent, needing continuous autofocus. Something fairly mundane and relatively simple, as Panasonic has an AI that can detect humans even when they're turning away from the camera. The AFC is set to that mode. The experience shows that it's not all bad, and with a little bit of luck you can get something very usable. But quite often the GH6 loses focus for no obvious reasons. The camera seems to be unaware of what it's looking at, even if it should be obvious, and can ruin an otherwise good long shot with a sudden focus hunting. Or pull right through the desired plane. Or not react at all. Nothing too relevant on a family birthday, but in a professional context and in situations where you only have one chance, it can be devastating. Continuous autofocus works in 120 frames per second, but seems to be disabled with 240 frames per second. One other thing that might be addressed with firmware is that I experience pumping of bokeh while pushing in and pulling out at fast f-stops. The focus has to hunt a little to keep in the narrow depth of field, but with this kind of depth of field, the jumping focus gives a weird out-of-focus effect. It is obvious on large displays, just where I would like my content to be seen. This might be very well addressed by changing the sensitivity or speed of the continuous autofocus, but having to test and fiddle around in that way doesn't make me confident in using autofocus. With my experience right now, I can't say if the autofocus works better or worse in certain frame rates, and I'm very sure that you can tune the settings very, very precisely to certain circumstances to improve results. I also think that Panasonic will always try to improve the autofocus in the following firmwares. Still, I like to spend my time on other things, like improving my skills as a very good focus puller. While you do miss critical focus a lot when pulling focus manually, you will really enjoy the results. Even missed focus can be sexy and usable. Much better than an autofocus that simply doesn't get it sometimes. For an on-the-road, out-there camera, long battery life is just so important, and the GH lineup has always been top-notch in that regard. So, how about the GH6? The GH6 uses a new type of battery that has a slightly higher capacity and allows for higher power draw. Unfortunately, that doesn't extend your runtimes for the most part. We clocked in 1 hour and 31 minutes of shooting ProRes HQ 5.7K at 24 frames per second with dynamic range boost on a single charge. Higher frame rates are more power hungry, and shooting H.265 Cinema 4K at 120 frames per second only gave us 45 minutes on a single charge. A power source like a V-Log battery can support the internal battery by being plugged into the USB port. This means that the internal battery still gets drained, but at a much reduced speed. Powering the camera with USB is only possible when a battery is inserted. With a codec like the 100 frames per second 4K and a 98 watt-hour V-Log battery connected via USB to the camera, we were able to achieve runtimes like 7 hours. Not because the V-Log ran out of juice, it was still half full, but because the internal battery ran out of juice. I think this might be due to the power draw limitations of the older USB format that these batteries usually have. So if you want to have a longer lifetime, you probably have to use a USB-C to USB-C because it has a higher power output, or one of the battery adapters that will give you run times that are virtually eternal. If you turn off the camera, USB power will charge the internal battery. The new batteries have the same form factor as the old batteries, and while you can use the new ones with the GH5, it's not that simple the other way around. Old batteries will fit in the GH6, but it will limit the camera, making them next to useless for filmmaking. Battery runtimes are still very good. If you use the GH6 in a serious fashion, you might want to buy a bunch of new batteries.
Round 1. Fight!
Now, how does the GH6 compare to the GH5 in terms of image quality? Under ideal circumstances, meaning very bright conditions and low dynamic range, I'm sure that the GH5 will hold its water. But when do you ever encounter ideal circumstances on the road? Our test conditions in the tunnel are quite difficult. With relatively dim and ever-changing lighting, Christopher is underexposed half of the time. Low light is an Achilles heel of the GH5, and this is what the GH5 can do. Besides that I missed the focus a bit, it's by no means a bad image, until you look at what the GH6 does in the same situation, shooting twice the frame rate, so getting half the amount of light. The GH5 clearly struggles and the image doesn't grade nicely. Colors are desaturated. The GH6 on the other hand delivers a nice, rich and very gradable image. As to be expected, a higher frame rate makes it much worse. At 120 frames per second, the GH5 just falls apart. Line skipping makes the image mushy, and the noise doesn't help. The comparison doesn't even seem fair. The GH6 handles the 120 frames per second with ease. Colors are still rich and the V-Log is very gradable. This result in dim lights displays how good the GH6 low light is.
GH6 wins. Fatality.
To end our test segment, I would like to give you my honest opinion as a filmmaker. Images are stunning in the right circumstances, especially when using fast lenses. Usability and versatility are awesome. The camera just doesn't get in your way and plays along well with almost any task. Can the IBIS replace a gimbal or slider? Of course not, but you can get away with a lot more than if you were using a GH5. Does it produce Alexa's kind of dynamic range? Of course not, but 13 plus stops are not shabby at all, and in this class of camera it's outstanding. It's a bit puzzling why Panasonic chose to not make the dual ISO of 800 and 2000 manually accessible. Can you leave your external recorder at home? Yes, unless you desire RAW, any monitor will do due to LUT, waveform and ProRes. The 4K slow motion up to 120 frames per second is stellar, and just by itself a reason to get the GH6, at least for me. Is it great in low light? Well, compared with the GH5 it certainly improves sensitivity and it beats any phone by a landslide. But it doesn't hold a candle compared to a modern full frame like the one the S1H uses. The pixels are just so much smaller. The fan might be a bit unappealing for GH purists, but it didn't seem to cause any problems by allowing otherwise impossible performance. I can live with a fan, I can't live with overheating. The autofocus is something that I consider fine for playing around, but it's not dependable for professional work. Is the GH6 better than the GH5? Of course it is, quite dramatically. And last but not least, the GH6 is a pretty good stills camera too. The GH6 is a very good all-rounder cam in a very sexy outfit. If you only can afford one camera and you don't want to invest in a whole infrastructure, the GH6 might be for you. If I personally had to choose between the GH6 and let's say an S5, because it's about the same price range, what would I choose? I would be very hard pressed because I really like to shoot in vintage lenses, and these are designed for full format cameras. This is why there's a clear advantage to the S5. But the focus on filmmakers in the GH6 is just so good, and I would really miss that fabulous slow motion. If I would be just out there and low light wouldn't be essential to me, the GH6 would be my permanent traveling companion like the GH5 was in the past. What do you think? Do you think the GH6 is worth the upgrade? Let us know in the comments. I would like to thank Panasonic for letting us test the GH6 pre-release. And I would like to thank Christopher for the sleepwalking. But most of all, I would like to thank our members who make this channel possible. I hope you found this interesting and give us a like if you think that we deserve one. We have several interesting projects in the pipeline, and if you want to find out more about them, you can always join us on Instagram or join our Toast Facebook group. We always post things that give you pretty nice hints what we're up to next. Subscribe and hit the notification bell if you want to know when those come out. Please consider becoming a member of the media division. There's an action pack for Kubrick and Lynch members waiting for you with footage from the GH6 and the LUTs that we created for our test shooting, so you can watch the footage and evaluate the quality of it without YouTube compression, always important. Also, with the LUTs you can start learning to grade for the camera right away. My name is Nicholas and I'm signing out with Nerdalicious wishes. Shoot something amazing.